A belated happy Hanukkah to all. I will not say happy holidays because Christmas is not a holiday. Holiday means holy day. And quite frankly, in all truth, Hanukkah is not a holy day, but it was a day that Jehovah, the Redeemer of Israel, our Father in heaven, designated for all Israel to remember. Remember the day where when the foundation of the temple was laid. Because on that day is going to be deliverance according to what I read in Haggai 2. All right, and it's mentioned several times in Haggai 2. Hanukkah. So that's that day I'm going to remember and keep in my mind. Now, so I'm going to address this article here on the Jewish News Syndicate, and it goes to show you what happens when people are sloppy with the truth. I disagree with every aspect of this, or nearly every aspect of this article. I'm going to try to set the record straight here. This is by Han Mazig, and as he puts it, because he doesn't want to say Yehoshua, they all the Jews know that his name was Yehoshua, or that his name is Yehoshua. They know this. But to address the Christians, they will say it this way: was not a Palestinian, he was a Mizrahi Jew. In modern terms, all Jews were once Mizrahi Jews. Now, this is the one part that I'm going to agree with. And I will show you what I'm talking about. This part is correct. But why use the name Mizrahi? What's the point? When I say it's correct, it should read that all Jews are Jews. Or maybe all Jews are Mizrahi Jews, all Jews are Ashkenazi Jews, all Jews are Sephardic Jews. Maybe that would have been the better way to put this. So he goes and says, therefore, if you want to give, as he should say, Yehoshua, a contemporary ethnicity, and he says it is Mizrahi Jew that fits, not Palestinian. All right, so within this article is a point of truth, like I say, a small point of truth that needs to be exposed. Why all the confusion concerning the Jews exists? It's because of the Romans. And of course, the Romans are modern day Babylonians, and the term Babel or Babylon means confusion. There is your source for your confusion, folks. So he goes, every year in the days leading up to Xmas, the Jesus was Palestinian, quote unquote, talking point surfaces off and online. Every year, anti-Israel activists hops on this bizarre bandwagon and drive it over historical facts. Many of the public figures that push this phrase are not Christian. They have no stake in the ethnic background. Now, one point of contention I have to have or expose here is that the word ethnic comes from the Greek word ethnos, which means Gentile. Oh, really? Yes, I'll show you. Watch this. Let's see here. Look up the word Gentile. I have to be careful not to use Paul's, because Paul, when he spoke to the Gentiles, the Greeks, he said Hellenes. All right. So let's go to Acts 21. And let's see if they do or don't use the word Hellenes here. Among the Gentiles. There it is. Ethnos. Ethnic ethnos is exclusively with the Gentiles. You see? You want proof? I'll give you proof. A race, people, nation, the nations, the heathen world, the Gentiles. A race or nation, the nations distinct from Israel. So Yehoshua, the Messiah, has no ethnicity at all. None. Zero. The ethnos are the Gentiles. So that's one particular glaring flaw in this conversation that needs to be cleared up. Yehoshua has no ethnic background. It's all Jewish. They claim he was a Palestinian because it furthered the erasure of Jewish people's connection to the land of Israel. The theory originated with the former Palestinian Authority chairman Yasser Arafat in 2006 and has snowballed since. Today, some even argue that, as they say, Jesus was the first Palestinian martyr. This year, anti-Israel BDS supporters such as Representative Ilhan Omar Suleiman, and Linda Sarsour have advanced this ahistorical narrative. Al Jazeera, The Independent, and even the New York Times have published articles defending this conjecture. And might I add, the New York Times actually defended Adolf Hitler in the 30s. The goal of the argument was, as they say, that Jesus was a Palestinian from Nazareth. No, it was not Jesus or Jesus. It was Yehoshua, and he was not a Palestinian. It is not only to erase Jewish ties to the land of Israel, but to also depict all Jews as white. Now, okay, so the sons of Japheth jump in this argument. The Middle Easterners, sons of Shem, jump into this argument. And even the sons of Ham love to jump into this argument. I will destroy all the myths about the complexion of Yehoshua, whose name is not Jesus. It also depicts all Jews as white and in consequence less sympathetic to intersectional social justice movements. This April, the Times published an article on the deep importance of Yehoshua, they say Jesus, I say Yehoshua, skin color, stating that he was born in Bethlehem and was most likely a Palestinian man with dark skin. Well, he most definitely was not a Palestinian man. Not if he's going to destroy the sons of Pelesheth as written in Numbers 24. So that argument has been utterly destroyed. The message is coupled with Palestinian videos. Chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat tweeting a video entitled Merry Palestinian Christmas, with a Palestinian claiming that their Jesus was one of us. He didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. He wasn't from Kentucky. He looked like DJ Khaled, minus 200 pounds. Mary, too, was a Palestinian. Mary's grandmother, a Palestinian. John the Baptist, St. George the Apostles, all Palestinians. Really? Now he goes into this argument. Countless Jews have dark skin, claiming that because, as they claim, Jesus, but his name is not Jesus, it's Yehoshua. Yehoshua means Jehovah is salvation. In literal Hebrew, it means I am salvation. I say the first one right, it means Jehovah is salvation, and it literally means I am salvation. Claiming that because Yehoshua was a person of color. He must be ethnically, and therein is the lie once again. He is not ethnically at all. I just proved that. So the argument is, their argument has no merit. It's baseless. So they say Palestinian erases countless Jews in the world today, Mitzrahi Jews, the largest ethnic group of Jews in Israel. No, they're not. Mitzrahi Jews are not ethnic. Neither are the Ashkenazi Jews. They're not ethnic at all. Neither are the Sephardic Jews. No, they're not ethnic. Once again, ethnic is a Greek word denoting all the other nations versus Israel. I just proved it. There it is right there. See? Ethnos, a race or people, a race, nation, the nations as distinct from Israel, a race, people, nation, the nations, the heathen world, the Gentiles. So to say the Jews are ethnically is calling them Gentiles. Please, folks, if you're going to make an argument concerning the Jews, have your facts straight. As he says, Mitzrahi Jews, the largest non-ethnic group of Jews, which is what it should read, in Israel today, share the same skin tone, heritage, and birthplace as he's saying Jesus, or it should be Yehoshua. Yet would never be accepted as Palestinian or identify ourselves as such. Well, that part I agree with. Now, there's very slim, small slivers of truth here that I'll pull out. Indeed, activists furthered the Palestinian Jew so-called Jesus narrative, are aware of the diversity of Israeli society and the global Jewish community. They distorted to deny all Jewish people our indigenous rights. While evidence in favor of this is overwhelming, activists who oppose Israel's right to exist and deny the Jewish people's connection to the land, perhaps before learning where indigenous status terms stems from and what it means. Just like they haven't learned the meaning of ethnic. The definition of the word ethnic. And how is it that you have so many theologians that are educated in yeshivas, seminaries, monasteries, who don't know this? Perhaps before learning where indigenous status stems from and what it means, still have an issue with his claim, supporting a narrative built on falsehoods that today is basically acknowledged as fact, explains indigenous rights activist Ryan Bellerose. To get the movement to crush Israel, welcomed in social justice spaces where indigenous rights are valued, activists must falsely allege Jews are not indigenous. You know, do you suppose, and it's probably going, maybe it'll mean what they say it means and maybe they won't. You know, sometimes you just have to go to the dictionary and find out and not assume that what people are telling you is the truth. Isn't that right? We just learned that from the word ethnic or ethnos, did we not? All right. It's an adjective originating or occurring naturally in a peculiar place, native. All right. Want to know the truth, folks? This is going to make everybody upset. including the Jews. You want to know the truth? I'll give you the truth. Deuteronomy 26 and verse 5. And we'll go to Strong's Concordance. Let's see what the Israelis really were. And in verse 5, right. So they were a people before they came in to possess the land. Did that make them indigenous? Nope. Afraid not, folks. You see, the indigenous people were the Canaanites. But there was a curse upon them, the Canaanites. And the curse that meant that sojourners were able to call that land of the cursed their own. And when it shall be, when you are come into the land which Jehovah your Elohim gives you for an inheritance, and possess it and dwell therein, that you shall take of the first part of all the fruit of the land, and you will bring of your land that Jehovah your Elohim will give to you, and you shall put it in a basket, and you shall go to the place which Jehovah your Elohim shall choose to place his name there. What place is that? Well, it is Jerusalem, or Jerusalem. And you shall go unto the priest, and it shall be in those days, and say unto him, I profess this day unto Jehovah Elohim, that I am come unto the country, unto the land, which Jehovah swore unto our fathers for to give us. And then the priest shall take the basket out of your hand, and set it down before the altar of Jehovah Elohim. And you shall speak and say before Jehovah Elohim, an Aramaean, ready to perish, was my father. An Aramaean was my father. Therefore, the Israelites were Aramaean, or Syrian. Syrian. You see, Abraham came from the land of the, was it the Chaldees? What's this? Land of Iraq today. A native of Ur in Mesopotamia. Okay. We know where that is. All right. So, Isaac married a Syrian woman. Her name was Rebekah. Jacob married the daughters of Rebekah's brother Laban. They were Syrian, Aramaean. Right. Now, we will go on with the subject at hand. Archaeology, genealogy, and history all support the Jewish claim to indigeneity, says Belarus. To say that Palestinian Arabs were the first inhabitants of the land of Israel is problematic for actual indigenous peoples like the Jewish people and the Amazigh, the Copts, the Assyrians, the Samaritans, and others who were forcefully conquered and subsumed and converted. It would literally be akin to white European in North America making the same claim. I want to go back to and destroy another myth. They keep talking about skin color, skin color, skin color. They just can't stop talking about skin color. All right. So it is nonsense to conclude that all the people of Ashkenaz were white or blonde hair and blue eyes. All right? It's nonsense. But Ashkenaz has the most blonde hair and blue eyes of all the people of the earth. But they're still a minority. The rest of them have darker hair and brown eyes. It is foolish to assume that all of the people of Seth, or Shem, Shem, have dark skin and black hair. It's absolutely foolish to assume that. There are some that have blonde hair and blue eyes. Just not as many as Ashkenaz. Now, Ashkenaz is not a son of Noah. Ashkenaz is a son of Japheth. So if we're going to start comparing, let's look at all the sons of Japheth. You will find that there are many of them. The vast majority of the sons of Japheth have dark hair and dark skin. The vast majority. You have Ashkenaz and Riphath, children of Japheth, that had, many of them had lighter colored skin, but they are a minority when it comes to the children of Japheth. Just like whiter skin among the children of Shem are a minority, are an even bigger minority, or a smaller minority, I should say. It's true that the vast majority of Jews have darker skin and darker hair. Well, that's true among Europeans. So what's the big deal? Why is everybody arguing over this? Confusion. Babylon. Our Father in heaven is not the author of confusion. Now, concerning. Now, King David was ruddy. That was a little bit unusual. A little bit. There are plenty of Jews who are ruddy. But when I say unusual, that would be kind of a minority. Just like white people are a minority in Japheth as well as among Shem. I know there's a lot of people that just can't, just because they can only see in two dimension, and that's sad. But David was ruddy. He had, therefore, light skin and red hair. That's ruddy. That's what ruddy means. Well, guess what? There's another Jew that everyone knows that has light skin and red hair. That is, what is his name? Glick. This guy. Yehuda Glick. This guy. All right. Oh boy, the fake Stinians. Many people would be, oh, he's European, he's white European. No, he's not. He's a Jew. He's a Jew. That's what King David looked like. Ruddy. But Yehoshua obviously didn't look like that. Why? Because he looked like everybody else and they could not pick him out in a crowd. Yes, folks, he looked like your average ordinary Jew. This kind of Jew would stick out like a sore thumb in the crowd, not saying that it's unusual, but these are in smaller numbers, ones who look like him. But this is what David looked like. He was ruddy. All right? But he's just as Jew as a darker-skinned, darker-haired Jew. So he says, when challenged, anti-Israel advocates who deny that Jews are indigenous to Israel brush it off, saying it's ridiculous to go that far back. I just pointed out, they're not indigenous. The Torah said that when they were going to bring gifts to the place where Jehovah chose, they are supposed to deny they were indigenous to that land. Say, my father was ready to die, and he was an Aramaean, a Syrian. Nevertheless, when we go as far back to the birth, see, this whole thing is messed up. But like I said, there is you start getting a little bit of truth down in here. Birth of Yehoshua, it is essentially to get the facts straight. I agree it is essential to get the facts straight. Fact number one, Israel is not indigenous to the Holy Land. It was given to them by Jehovah, our Father in heaven. And they were not to say they were indigenous to it. They were not allowed to say. They were supposed to say, my father about to die was an Aramaean. So let's get to the truth. The simple truth is that activists are taking a relatively new name for this region, Palestine, and placing it upon a far more ancient Jewish person. Well, actually, Pelisheth were there in the Holy Land before Israel came. So that's not true either. But they are cursed people. The use, in 132 CE, the current state of Israel was renamed Palestina by the Romans. They did this to punish the Jews for their largest revolt against Rome by stripping them of the name connection to Jerusalem and Judea, while honoring the Philistines, a foreign people, who conquered them. The Philistines were there in the Holy Land before the Israelites were. That's the truth. Does that mean the Philistines have a right to it? No, it does not. No, it does not. The use of Even the earliest variants of Palestine began over 100 years after the birth of, as he says, Christ, after the birth of Moshiach. The term Palestine was unofficially used to describe the land south of Syria by the Ottoman Empire in the 1500s and was not popular among the people living in the region at the time. Only after World War I did another occupying force, Britain, declare the modern-day Israel, as well as Jordan, as Palestine. Now, the real Palestine was in Gaza, was actually on the eastern shore of Israel. The Palestinians, they were a sea people. The Palestinians or Philistinians were sea people. If you want to read the Torah, you will find how Israel had to deal with the Philistines in eastern Israel for a long time. Samson also had to deal with them. Now, but when Rome applied Judea and Samaria as Palestine, and when the British applied the whole of Holy Land as Palestine, they committed an egregious sin, because those lands were never Philistine occupied lands, ever. Ever! They were not. Just like the Romans, anti-Israeli activists used this term to diminish Jewish historical claim to Israel. All right, I'm not going to sit here and argue about lighter skin and darker skin and all that. That's all absolute nonsense. Okay? What I do want to go into is, what does the Scripture say? If you go into what the Scripture says, you're going to find the truth. If you're going to look at Moses and the prophets, you're going to find the truth. So today we're going to look into Moses and the prophets. We're going to find the truth concerning this. What is going to happen to the people of Sheth or Pelesheth. All right. Numbers 24. I think it's Numbers 24. I thought it was. Let me try star of Jacob. It is Numbers 24. Okay, verse 17. We'll start in verse 16. The oracle of him who hears the words of Elohim, or El, and knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty. I want to go to King James, Strong's Concordance. There we go. And knew the knowledge of the Most High, the greatest, to see the vision of the Almighty, falling eye open. In other words, he was in a trance with his eyes open. I see him. Behold, I behold him. It says, but not near. Maybe does mean near. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the borders, as I pointed out just a few videos ago, of Moab. That would be Jordan. smite the borders of Jordan, and destroy all the children of Sheth. Sheath. Now, it says right here, a son of Adam. And yes, Sheth was a son of Adam. But this is a different Sheth. In order to find the answer, we have to go to Joel 3. When is he going to do this? When he causes the people of Judah, Yehuda, and Jerusalem to return. Okay? The exiles, the captives of Yehuda and Jerusalem will return. See that word? Return. I will gather the Goy and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat and will judge them for the sake of my people, for my heritage, for his people, not only his people, but for his heritage, the land. That's his land. It does not belong. Because I've said this over and over and over again. It belongs to nobody except for our Father in heaven. Nobody. Nobody can claim that land. The Philistines can't claim it. The Canaanites can't claim it. The Lebanese can't claim it. The Syrians can't claim it. And not even the Jews, the Israelites, can claim it. It is holy. And the children of Israel were driven out of that land for being unholy in the Holy Land. Just like the Canaanites were driven out of that land for being unholy in the Holy Land. That is a special land above all the lands of the earth. Nobody has a right to that land. Nobody. Except to whom Jehovah gives it to. For my heritage, Israel, whom they scattered among the Gentiles, the Goy, and they divided, or they divide and shared amongst each other, the Gentiles did, his land. They were not supposed to do this. So that means the British are guilty too. They have cast lots for my people and given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. Yes, what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon? That's Lebanon. And all the coast of, as King James Version accurately puts it, Palestine or Pelesheth. Pelesheth is Sheth. Will you render me a recompense? If you recompense me, why would they recompense him? Because he's bringing these people back into his land. And he's telling them, what are you going to do about it? If you try something, he's going to throw you out of your land, the land of Pelesheth, Gaza, because you have taken my silver and my gold and carried them into your temples, my goodly and pleasant things. The children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem you sold to the Greeks. Yes, folks. To the Hellenes, to Yavan, the Greeks, the sons of Japheth. The people who the Philistines call white people. You sold them to those people, and now you're calling Jews white. Really? That you might remove them far from their border. Yeah, this is how they slander the Jews. Run them out of their land, help the Romans get rid of them, and then call them Roman. Greeks, Romans, European, they're all the same. Sons of Japheth. Behold, I will raise them out of the place where you have sold them. And he has done so. And will return your recompense upon your own head. That's coming. Who is going to do this? A star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall arise out of Israel, and he will smite the borders of Moab, Jordan. In other words, he's going to tear those borders down and run them out and destroy the children of Sheth or Pelesheth. And will return your recompense upon your own head, and I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Yehudah, and they, in other words, Yehudah, the star of Jacob, in Yehudah, is going to gain a victory, and he will destroy the sons of Sheth or Pelesheth by selling them to the Sabians. Black people. People that the Palestinians call Abd. Abd. You black folks, you think you're despised among, as you say, white people? You don't even know what that means, that word despised means. When your racial group, when the name of it is Abd, do you know what Abd means, black folks? Huh? It means slave. Well, guess what? The shoe is going to be on the other foot. The people of Sheba, or the Sabians of North Africa, are going to be slave owners of the ones who called them slave. That's right. That's called poetic justice, folks. That's called poetic justice. But nobody will talk about it. Except me. I'll talk about it on YouTube. To a people far off, Jehovah has spoken. So if he said it, it's going to be done. And what then? What then? As you can see here, the Gentile narrative is going to be overturned and overthrown. And there is nothing that the Europeans will be able to do about it. No, this particular truth is despised. And all the religions of the world have chosen their own narrative. They have replaced Israel's Messiah with their own version. The Europeans replaced Israel's Messiah with their lighter-skinned, lighter-haired, long-haired, blue-eyed Messiah. The Eastern peoples have their own version, and of course the African folks have their black version. And when he comes, when the real Messiah comes, because he does not look like their version, And because he's going to come and save Israel, because he's going to come and fulfill the gospel, they're going to reject him. Which brings me to the subject of the gospel. All right, so let's go and ask the question to Google, what is the gospel? What is the gospel? All right? Many Christians in churches and organizations regularly use the word gospel to describe their convictions. Theological controversies have occurred and do occur over the meaning of the gospel and who preaches it faithfully. What does the familiar word gospel mean? The best way to answer the question is to turn to the Bible. In Greek New Testament, the noun euangelion, gospel, appears just over 70 times. Since in one sense the whole New Testament is about the gospel, we might have expected the word to have been used more frequently. Even more surprisingly, its use varies greatly among the authors of the New Testament books. Paul uses the word more than 3 times as often as the other authors combined. Most of the others' uses are found in Mark, Matthew, and a few, if any, in Luke, John, Peter, and James. The word gospel most simply means good news. All right. He says in the New Testament, it refers to the good news of Jesus, as they say, the Savior. But nobody knows what the gospel is, do they? That's sad. That's extremely sad. See, the gospel was first spoken, or the good news was first spoken in detail. Isaiah 49. Let me just do it like this. That way we'll cover both. See, okay, all right. So Isaiah 42 verse 6. This is the gospel. Right? Jehovah called you in righteousness. Called who? The Messiah. And will hold your hand and will keep you. He will guard over you. And to set a covenant of the people, which means Israel, because the next group is and a light for the Gentiles, the going. That's the good news. That's the gospel. The new covenant. The new covenant for Israel and for a light to the Gentiles. A covenant for Israel and for a light to the Gentiles. I've been saying this over and over again. The new covenant is for Israel. The light for the Gentiles comes after the fact. That is the gospel. Now, let's go to Isaiah 49, verse 6. He says, "It is too small a thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved ones of Israel." The restore is cause them to return. All right, right? Let's not skip over this. Restore. That's to return the people of Israel and guard over them. So this is the gospel. It is a light thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribe of Jacob, to cause them to stand up, and to return the preserved and to guard over and keep of Israel. I will also give you for a light to the Gentiles, that you may be my salvation unto the ends of the earth. That's the gospel. But the Gentiles today don't believe in the gospel. If they did, they would be sending surveyors out to all the land, written in Joshua or Yehoshua 1 verses 1 through 4, and making sure that the gospel is being fulfilled, that the land is given back to Israel. They would be doing that if they believed in the gospel, but they don't believe the gospel. Most of you listening to me today do not believe the gospel. To return and guard over and keep Israel. That is the first step in the gospel. The second step is a light to the Gentiles, that he might be his salvation unto the ends of the earth. Thus saith Jehovah, the Redeemer of Israel, sacred and holy, a soul despised, the nation abhors, from a servant to a ruler. Not the way that King James has it written. They're going to despise him. This is the reason why they call him Jesus, because they despise Yehoshua. The kings will see and arise, and princes shall bow down, because Jehovah that is faithful, the Holy One of Israel, he will choose. That's the gospel. All right? So, Acts 13:47. And when the Jews were gone out of the synagogue, the Gentiles besought that which these words might be preached to them the next Sabbath. They were preaching them the gospel. What is the gospel? The new covenant for all Israel, and calls Israel to return back to their land and to be a light to the Gentiles. So when they preached the gospel to the Jews, they preached the first part about it to the Jews, and when the Gentiles came to the synagogue, they preached the second part. And when the congregation was broken up, many of the Jews and religious proselytes followed Paul and Barnabas, who speaking to them persuaded them to continue in the grace of Jehovah. So the next Sabbath day came almost the whole city together to hear the word of Jehovah. But when the Jews saw the multitudes, they were filled with envy, and spoke against those things which were spoken of by Paul, contradicting and blaspheming. Why? Because they did not want the Gentiles. They did not want the gospel to be a light to the Gentiles. Just like the Gentiles today do not want all Israel to be gathered back and returned. And then when Paul and Barnabas waxed bold and said it is necessary that the word of Jehovah should be first have spoken to you. Of course. Why? Because the first part of the gospel is the return of Israel. All Israel. And it will be in the last days. But seeing you put it from yourself and judge yourselves unworthy of everlasting life, we turn to the Gentiles. Now, if the Gentiles today reject the return of all Israel, as written in the first part of the gospel, then the same damnation upon the Gentiles applies that Paul just pointed out. Unworthy of everlasting life. And when the Gentiles have done this, and they have done this for nearly 2,000 years, then the script is going to be flipped and the gospel goes back to Israel. Because this generation of Gentiles, Gentile nations, have proven themselves to be unworthy of everlasting life because they have rejected the new covenant, the gospel, the return of Israel, the land promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.